This is the People Class Podcast, the official podcast of the People Class. Show your support at patreon.com/thepeopleclass. Send us a shout out at the People Class on Twitter, and send us your feedback at thepeopleclass@gmail.com. Class is in session. This is our reality on this continent called North America, on this planet called Earth, hurtling around the sun at around 70,000 miles per hour in this galaxy called the Milky Way, in the endless void we call the universe. This is our reality on August 18th, 2020. And welcome to another session of The Quad, a community rant session on the current social and political climate in the United States, and on any topics we feel are important to cover. Today I would like to welcome back our resident political analyst, Brian Newton. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm okay. How are you?
Yeah, the feelings mutual.
Mm.
And also joining us today, once again, let's welcome back Gabrielle Warren, aka Warren G of the Who Are We movement organization based out of St. Louis. How are you doing today?
Great. It's good to be back. It's been too long.
It has been too long. I tell you, this living paycheck to paycheck thing has made this podcast thing a little difficult, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm glad you're still into it though and making it happen. It's great that you can just keep doing this. So
Kind of have to. Once again, like, you know, I'm really dedicated to this belief that our kids should live a better quality of life than we did. You know, that used to be an American ideal, and somehow we lost that along the way. Yeah, I'm going to keep striving for that. So, let's see. Today, we will be talking about the silent assimilation of foreign manufacturers here in U.S. soil. All right, this has been happening for quite some time. I have some links I'll share with everyone too, and a few references that we'll actually cover today and provide commentary for. And I also want to, and I'll place a link in anywhere you can download this podcast. There's a Library of Congress CQ researcher op-ed that I found from like 1967 titled Foreign Competition for American Producers. And apparently this global shift was seen coming then, right? So I'll place the link for that wherever you can listen to this podcast, and just go ahead and take a look at that report. It's interesting. So ultimately, we're going to be talking about the selling out of the American working class. If you want to know why the government is allowing nearly half of the nation's population to go broke, jobless, and homeless, if you want to know why the government has not offered the nation's population a New Deal bailout, that's what we're going to discuss today. Our opening track today was General Public's Taking the Day Off. Some of you millennials may recognize it from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That used to be a favorite movie of mine. The scene in particular where Cameron attempts to drown himself, you know, Ferris Bueller, you're my hero. So we will start out today by talking about how Congress is taking the day off. They are currently out of session and taking weeks off from doing nothing. During a pandemic, with no stimulus, no plans for helping out the average working class American, and like 30 million more Americans are facing evictions, right? What say you?
So that's a tall glass of water, my friend. Like, God, I just can't believe they get away with it.
Yeah, me and Brian were talking, kind of planning out what the topic was going to be for the show today, and I kind of asked, I've been asking for quite some time, at what point, right, is our government personnel just people doing things, right? They're writing these papers they call laws that happen to always take more from us and give them more abundance. And we're just like, okay, yep, that's the laws. Okay, we'll just go with it. Like, at what point is it just like people just doing stuff, right? Like, and we just actually need to actually take our government back and get people in there who are willing to work and govern.
Well, it's
Yeah.
interesting just due to the priorities of what they decide they're going to talk about. Like, literally, there is a pandemic and an economic crisis, and an unemployment crisis. Everything, a housing crisis that's about to happen. All these things are about to happen, and they're discussing TikTok.
Yes, yes, but it goes deeper than this. For the past 40 something years here in America, our government has been on permanent break time. They've been hiding in the break room, playing, or excuse me, in the bathroom playing Candy Crush. And we've been suffering here the whole time, and things have just been getting worse and worse and worse.
Well,
When do we actually get people in there who are going to do the job that they were hired
well,
for? If I
a
don't
lot of
produce what my employer, the way they want me to produce, they get rid of me and replace me with someone else.
a lot of this is one of the reasons why our elected officials are so hamstringed by inaction in this country is because we've built the expectation that government has to work a certain way. It's slow. It's like you only get like incremental changes at any given time, especially if you're wanting to do things for the people. If you want something for corporations or the wealthy elites, oh no, they just get a check written to them immediately. But like for the rest of us, it's always like, well, I know like you need a housing plan, but we have to bring it up to a debate. And it's always like one side says yes, one side says no. I don't know who's right. I can't judge, so let's just not do anything.
Yeah,
I think
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just think the key there was let's just not do anything, which is
Hmm.
then yeah, then it goes. They just move over to something that does not do anything for the American people or the people in general. It just furthers their lack of care and their lack of actually having a true representative job.
Yeah.
It's so strange.
Because it's easy for them to then point fingers, say, well, the Democrats aren't doing anything for you for the Republican side, and the Democrats can go, well, the Republicans aren't doing anything for you on the Republican side. You know what? In many cases, they're both right, but obviously that it's just pushing the blame down the road because, as I've said many times, all these people are rich. All these people will be fine no matter what the situation is.
Hmm.
And if we had a better representative government, like more skin in the game, who wasn't like fabulously wealthy, as a representative of our political system, they like we see more recent Congress people and senators coming up through the ranks and represented House of Representative members that they have a little more skin in the game, which is why they're a little more active. So you can talk about that with like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and AOC. But then on the Republican side, you got all these like QAnon Tea Partiers who are like in honestly the same boat. They're the ones focusing on like we need to get jobs for the American people and blah blah blah. So at least they stand on something politically. They're not just playing the games of like, well, I got to work with my opponent on the other side. They're like, no, I don't care about my opponent on the side. I want to get jobs for you.
You know what? Noticing a lot of parallels here, especially with the retail industry. That's where I professionally have been most of my adult working career. Um, First of all, America, let me tell you, first and foremost, our government, our public servants, meaning in the context of the retail hierarchy, or the corporate structure, you are their managers. The managers have been uh, phoning it in. They've been calling out. Therefore, the employees have been just fucking around all day, right? Laissez-faire government should never be accepted by the people. These guys are just stealing hours, as far as I'm concerned, right? If you want to think, if you want to think about this country in business terms, the way people often like to do, and the way Mr. Trump claims that he is governing this country, he is indeed governing this country like a corporate leader. It all falls down to the what do they call it? The frontline guys, right? The freight workers, the cashiers, the stockers, right? That's where the buck stops, right? And so we have at some point mistaken our role here in the US, and we have accepted this role of the freight worker, the stocker, the cashier. Meanwhile, it's a complete role reversal, and our employees have somehow taken over, right? And they're living high off the
Yeah,
hog, and they're not doing anything. They're not sweating.
yeah.
They're not lifting the box. What happened? What
By
happened?
by our employees, you mean like our representatives who are supposed to
Our
work for us.
public servants who should be working for us, including the president of the United States.
Right. It's not they're not monarchs, they're not kings. Just because they claim to be elites doesn't mean that they're better than anybody else.
No,
They're
no,
people with
yeah.
jobs and people with agendas and people with perspectives. That's why I think it should be just criminal for anyone making of so anyone over a wealth of obviously like hundreds of thousands of dollars, but also just millions to billionaires to be representative of our government. They do not represent and they do not have any interest with average Americans. They can't. It's like that would be like asking someone who was born and raised on Mars to come down here and have like the same values and like relevant experiences as someone who was raised in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
They would have no frame of reference. They live on a completely different planet than the rest of us, and they're trying to live on a different planet than the rest of us. So that's another telling factor.
Yeah, the terraforming and gentrifying and yeah, that's basically what gentrifying is, terraforming on a smaller social scale.
Yeah. And as far as like the selling out of this country, it's they don't even see it as selling out because like the neoliberal like agenda, the game plan has always been massive global wealth and global infrastructure. But the problem with that, like workers of the world unite, obviously, but it's not like they're going to give more power to the worker in India. They're going to keep them at suppressed slave wages. They just want to do the same thing for the American worker.
Yeah, for sure. There's no pretense now on what we are as American citizens or non-citizens, but as working class people who reside in this country. There used to be some sort of a semblance of, you know, citizenship and protection because of that citizenship, or um, that the people somehow mattered in some way, shape, or form. Having a encore performance of basically the early 20th century in America. The
Hmm.
wars, with the pandemic, with the economic crash. They got a bailout the first time. This time we don't get a bailout. And they are very adamant about telling us you're not getting a bailout. There is not going to be a new deal.
Well,
You know,
remember,
there's,
but also remember what was going on in the early 20th century around after World War One for sure, but definitely around World War Two. Is like there was a strong communist and left movement even within America. Like that's when the Bolsheviks took over in Russia, and they were like all those were all like working class people and people fighting the wars. And at the end of World War One, they said, you know, enough of these rich men's wars. We're taking the country over.
mhm.
That's
Well,
that's
so
what happened. They literally took it over by force.
so that actually has a lot to do with what's happening right now with the current bailout. instead of them bailing us out, they're shouting at us saying, go back to work, because we are the servants. We are the ones who need to keep that economy running. We're the rats running the race as far as they're concerned. The thing about the bailout is if they decide to give us any more money, any more power, any more assistance, any more structural change, they are empowering us through their system. And the last thing they want is powerful laborers utilizing the resources that they allocate against them. It is the weapon that we would use in order to make the change that we desire. So they're not going to give us anything. They want to shout at us and say, "Go back to work and feel happy, feel lucky, feel grateful, and you're welcome."
Hmm.
So that's a way to look at it for sure.
That's absolutely that's the truth.
Yeah, for sure. I want to kind of highlight the gradual hollowing out of the American working class since the Reagan administration, and this is just so devastating to talk about and just to watch happen. Um, I feel like the play now is to make us, and no, and you're absolutely right, Gabe. But ultimately, the play here is to. I'll present some things later, kind of showing how the timeline has advanced a lot faster than they thought it would, and so hence this is why it's sort of this mad scramble in 2020 right now. But there's they are purposely right now making the American people, putting them into a very vulnerable position right now, right? Due to the coronavirus, they were able to take advantage of that and then cause a job scarcity, right? A manufactured job scarcity. They put a lot of people out of homes. A lot of homeless will be subject to getting funneled into the prison system. And then just with the added desperation of everyone out there right now, whether you're still employed or can still pay the mortgage or rent or not, people are just going to do some desperate shit right now, right? They're going to start eventually bringing jobs back, right? My thing is, and I'm not focused on Trump. I'm not focused on Biden. Doesn't matter whoever the next American leader will be. This is a global shift here, and you're going to see more and more foreign manufacturers inundate America. And we're going to be praising these guys for bringing jobs back, but it won't be for the benefit of Americans, and it won't be American production, right? We'll be producing for a bunch of other countries. And I'll actually get into a list of those and break down each. This specific list is on foreign auto manufacturers, but I'm gonna actually go down the list of each manufacturer and the city where they have manufacturing plants, and they're still expanding. Every once in a while, I'll check my Google feed, and I'm sorry I'm being very long in the tooth here. I'll check my Google feed, and I'm seeing how, in a new state, a new Toyota factory is opening up somewhere, or a Honda factory, or et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to it. I most certainly have not been seeing this out in mainstream media. I've had to dig around for quite a bit, but are you seeing this shift? Am I just reaching? Once again, is this some nutrageous tinfoil hat stuff here?
Well, so what are you saying here? Are you saying that there is manufacturing coming back to America and
There will be, but it won't be GM and Ford opening up factories in Detroit, right?
well, yeah, of course. I mean, the more responsible car companies such as Toyota or Honda that actually sell you a halfway decent product, um, they're still giant corporations with uh, ties to big money in in Asia, and they definitely exploit workers over there, and they use cheap parts and stuff like that. And but we are the number one customers of those products, and
Mm. We're gonna get into this a little later. Let me just put. Let me just hold on.
what I
It's
was
a
going to say,
matrix shit right here.
no, no, hold
We,
on, hold
we,
on.
we,
What they was that was basic. So basically, they open these plants up here
uh-huh.
for optics, and I haven't heard any much about this kind of stuff. But yeah, they
My
kind
point
of
exactly.
open these things for optics. It's not like they're any better, business wise, but they make it seem as though America has a piece of the pie. The working class in America has a part in this, and in reality, it's a very small percentage that makes up for what we've lost throughout decades.
Hmm. Well, see, I was laughing at you saying that we are their best customer because in what I've been looking at here and some of the studies I'm going to present today, we've been their best customer, not in the consumer sense, really, really. That's what's presented to you, right? That's the prosperity portion of that you're meant to see. We have been the best customer apparently since around the 60s. This sort of shift started, and we have been such a resource for labor, for especially Korean and Japanese markets, especially in Chinese markets, yeah, for about 50 years now, 60 years now. And this particular this particular report here, the Foreign Competition for American Producers, which was written back in like 1967, it was sort of the first time you really saw kind of somebody bullhorning and warning Americans about this shift. Yeah, we have been more human. What's the term? Human capital stock for them than we are consumers. And ironically, Toyota in particular, according to Mr. Ken Roberts from his report, insult to injury, foreign manufacturers now making more cars in the U.S. than U.S. companies. This is a op-ed written back in January of 2018. He cites here that 75% of Japanese cars sold in the United States are manufactured here. So, I mean, this is crazy stuff. Like nobody's really paying attention to it. Like people get excited when a new plant opens up because it means work in their area, but then when it comes to wages, when it comes to helping out the community that the plant opened up in, lights off, right? Nobody's home.
Right.
Um,
Well, like part of that is because we don't have a strong labor force to enact or enforce that wages are sufficient for the living and working class citizens of this country. So
Thank
if
you
they
for
open
bringing
up a
that
new
up.
plant, yeah, if they open up a new plant, they're just going to exploit desperate people who desperately needed that job employment because this country does not provide. Thank you, Car. This country does not provide a way for people to sustain living on their own, like through any social or welfare programs, like just provide housing and food and wealth or even clean water half the time.
Yeah.
So it's like you need that,
You know,
fortunately.
right? Yeah, that's perfect timing into sort of a segue into this next point here, right? So I'm glad you brought that up. So I'm going to read a couple of things here. This is going to be from these articles I was looking up in preparation for this here today. The first one I just mentioned, I'm going to kind of read a couple of excerpts, right? And we'll get on the point, the main takeaway here. All right. Once again, this is insult to injury. Foreign manufacturers now making more cars in U.S. than U.S. companies. author Ken Roberts, January 22nd, 2018. And I'll post the link in the description. Okay, Roberts opens with, quote, foreign motor vehicle manufacturers are now making more cars and trucks in the United States than General Motors, Ford, and all other U.S. companies. A first in U.S. history. That's based on projections for the first quarter of 2018 from wardsauto.com, as reported recently in the Wall Street Journal. In his report, Robert criticizes Trump, quote, Trump, it appears, is on board for more foreign manufacturing in the United States at the expense of manufacturing by U.S. companies. After all, it is creating jobs, end quote. Okay, and then I go back to that point I made earlier. Robert notes that 75% of Japanese cars sold in the United States are manufactured here. Okay. And Roberts concludes in his study, in coming months and years, you will also start hearing more about Chinese and even Indian car manufacturers. Further encroachment on what was once an industry that was the exclusive province of the United States, particularly in the Detroit area. And so, get this. I'm going to mention these locations to highlight your point, Brian. Primary locations for manufacturing warehouses, right? Foreign manufacturing warehouses. Alabama, South Carolina, Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Texas. And I've heard news recently myself of Arizona and Nevada. They're coming to your place soon. Roberts attributes this phenomena due to a lack of unions in those areas, right? And really quick, and Sarah, I'm going to butcher this name, Sarah Rathke and Ayako Hobbs's report, Coming to America, Foreign Manufacturers Looking to Produce in the U.S., August 2015. Quote, textile operations in China are actually starting to become unprofitable. So production was moved to America. And Creer Group is not alone. JN Fibers Inc., also of China, is building a plant in South Carolina. Indian textile manufacturer Shrival, I can't say this group, Shrival Petit Group is building a factory in Georgia. In quote, several factors are at play to offset the cost of labor, and this is why they're moving here. Years of low employment mean that Americans are willing to work longer hours and for suppressed wages. The U.S. is also home to several right-to-work states where union representation is low, and workers are not restricted to a single task, but rather can set up, operate, and run multiple machines. So once again, this highlights your point, Brian. The lack of union representation and labor solidarity is what's allowing this to happen, right? So we're sort of, would you say, willing or unwilling participants in this transaction here?
Few people, I think, are willing participants. I think most people are unwilling simply because of a lack of political education, understanding, and economic understanding within this country. Mm-hmm. Because like the people who are willing are probably the ones who are benefiting the most from like these institutions as they exist today.
True. And sort of in some of the conversations we had earlier, sort of that I want to be comfortable, that feeling of comfortableness, and that the system's already there, it's established.
But even some of those people, if they feel comfortable, they may not recognize that their house is built on sand.
Exactly.
But their house is still standing, so they're like, "Oh, we're okay." No, that house is sinking slowly but surely. It's sinking.
Blissful ignorance is what that's called. Gabe, would you like to comment on this at all?
I just like the idea of it's willingness through ignorance, and it's unfortunately something I see on a daily basis in my job. And I love the visual of the house on sand. Like that is a perfect metaphor for the situation. So
okay, great. So I mean, this has been out there for some time, but once again, like I'm surprised that Brian, you didn't really have much of this information. Um, it just goes to highlight that, man, all this stuff is happening under our noses, and once again, since we're not paying attention to what's happening politically, um, and being active in our communities, right? Like we probably talked about this before. I'm sure me and you have, Brian, but people go crazy over these, say, bids for, say, Amazon to open up a warehouse in their community, and it's like, hold on, wait. Don't go bootlicking them. Understand they're gonna get more out of opening up in your neighborhood than you're gonna get. Don't know. Like, make them promise to give back something to you by opening up there. And I think you brought this point up yesterday, Brian, right? Like how we should be handling these foreign manufacturers opening up here in America. It should not be situations like a Nestle in Michigan, where we have Flint, Michigan, some miles away from the lake where Nestle is siphoning up water, and they have poison lead water and have for 7 years. And those people, once again, cannot do so much as walk into that property and dip a glass into that lake, right? Because it doesn't belong to them. It belongs to a Swiss company.
Right.
So kind of just go over really quick some of the things that you believe, if you're not opposed to foreign markets opening here.
Yeah. So one of the big problems we have in this country is how business, and I say business as in like corporations and the people who control them, not like your mom and pops, is the fact that business gets so much leeway in how they operate within this country. Like America often operates as like a tax haven for even European and Asian, Japanese, Chinese corporations.
Mm-hmm.
So part of that is the fact that like if you open up a business here in America, there used to be more stringent rules about how labor is conducted, how business is conducted, but like over the past 50 years, definitely under the Reagan Revolution, Clinton and Obama, of course Bush were responsible for this as well. They got rid of a lot of those like protections about like what you can do to our environment, how you can exploit labor. I mean, that's what like right to work laws are all about.
Yep.
It's saying like, hey, now you can even prevent people from unionizing if they choose to, and within certain states. So because we have such lax policies on how businesses operate, businesses are only going to come here and they're only going to like exploit the system, exploit our resources, and make it more difficult for us to maintain anything. Like if you can't even control the water that you're drinking, like now they've got you completely co-opted. But like other countries, especially European countries, they have strong protections about how businesses operate within their country. Like they don't give away water rights for their government, and they aren't allowed generally to give away workers' rights within their government. They have strong labor organizing. They have strong like worker and citizen protections that we have lost and have been eroded from us. And like the Amazon example you gave, that thanks to representatives like AOC and other people in that New York area, they said, hell no, you cannot bring that business how you operate here. It took a massive grassroots effort and media calling it out as well. That's the other thing that I don't think we address enough is the fact how co-opted corporate media gets. That when you do get them on the right side of an issue because of like political figures or activists, that then it's even easier to shift the conversation, because like most of these deals happening, like the one you're talking about with Toyota coming to Texas, and all those other companies, that happens under the radar. Most people don't know about it. Thus, it's already happened before like word even gets out.
Oh yeah, well, I know they're already here. I think they're gonna have, and I'm sorry if I'm misquoting this statistic here, but I think something by like 2025, there's gonna be like 5 plants opening up here. There's definitely one in San Antonio. I think it opened up a couple of years before I arrived, before my migration. Yeah, and it's crazy. And here, let's do this. Really quick, we're just gonna take a quick break for our sponsor snipe, and then we'll be right back and discussing America selling out and Congress taking a day off. Thank you for tuning in to another session of the People Class Podcast, the official podcast of the People Class. I hope you found the information shared in today's session enlightening, or at the very least, raise some questions. I extend an invitation to join us for more weekly sessions. And remember, our work does not stop here. Get active, organize, and take control over your destiny as an American working class person. Class dismissed.